Julius Evola on homosexuality. Today's post will be controversial both for bisexualistic RFSLs and homophobic Puritans. It is nevertheless a necessary video in order to reconnect back to the Indo-Aryan and healthy view of things, and to get past the sexophobic Puritanism that has dominated our culture for more than 1,000 years. The traditional view of gender is that they are expressions of metaphysical and essential categories. Yin and Yang are best known, and that the androgynism that is sweeping over the world today, where one is alleging that sex is but mere social constructions, is an abomination. Most traditional civilizations have been open to the possibility of individuals happening to be born in the wrong body, where the spiritual and physical sex have not been matched, or with less clear and definitive gender identity. In accordance with the traditional perspective, one has then tried to find a social niche for these, where entertainment, prostitution, administration, and mysticism seem to have been the most common. Berdasher, Hira, and whatever other labels we've historically called them. It is important to emphasize that this has not meant that they've been letting them spread bisexual ideologies of the type that the homosexual lobby is doing today, where they want to eliminate gender roles, eliminate the nuclear family, and claims that everyone in actuality is bisexual and that heterosexuality is kind of an oppression. Evola secularized between natural homosexuals and those who have become homosexuals because of the environment, and in no way at all mean that it is healthy and sound when, for example, children who are heterosexual in nature is homosexual because of environmental factors. At the same time, it is doubtful whether the West's lesbians, bisexuals, gays, and transgender people had made themselves representatives of such antisocial teachings if society as a whole hasn't offered them a recognized niche instead of denying their existence. It's something for the homophobic Puritans to ponder on. Anyway, enough with the comments. Here is excerpt from Eros and the Mysteries of Love, Metaphysics of Sex by Julius Evola. Homosexuality is so widespread a practice that it cannot be overlooked in a doctrine of sex. Goethe wrote that it is as old as mankind itself and therefore can be said to be a part of nature, although it is contrary to nature. To find an explanation, it is necessary to descend to a lower level and examine various empirical possibilities. Normally, two forms of homosexuality are distinguished in sexology. One has an inborn, natural character, where the other has an acquired character and is conditioned by psychological and sociological factors influenced by a person's environment. But in the second of these forms, it is necessary to give a proper value to the distinction between forms having a vicious nature and forms that presuppose a latent predisposition which is aroused under given circumstances. It is necessary to set forth this condition because, given the same situation, different types behave in different ways and may not become homosexual. It is important, however, not to consider the inborn form of homosexuality in a rigid way, but to allow a certain possibility of variation. In natural homosexuality, or in the predisposition to it, the most straightforward explanation is provided by what we said earlier about the differing levels of sexual development and about the fact that the process of sexual development in its physical and even more so in its psychic aspect can be incomplete. In that way, the original bisexual nature is surpassed to a lesser extent than in a normal human being, the characteristics of one sex not being predominant over those of the other sex to the same extent. Next, we must deal with what M. Hirschfeld called the intermediate sexual forms. In cases of this kind, for instance, when a person who is nominally a man is only 60% male, it is impossible that the erotic attraction based on the polarity of the sexes in heterosexuality, which is much stronger the more the man is male and the woman is female. One can also be born between individuals who, according to the birth registry, and as regards only the so-called primary sexual characteristics, belong to the same sex, because in actual fact they are intermediate forms. In the case of pederasties, Ulrich said rightly that it is possible to find the soul of a woman born in the body of a man. But it is necessary to take into account the possibility of constitutional mutations, a possibility that has been given little consideration by sexologists. That is, we must also bear in mind cases of regression. It may be that the governing power on which the sexual nature of a given individual depends, a nature that is truly male or truly female, may grow weak through neutralization, atrophy, or reduction of the latent state of the characteristics of the other sex, and this may lead to the activation and emergence of these recessive characteristics. And here the surroundings and the general atmosphere of society can play a not unimportant part. In a civilization where equality is the standard, where differences are not linked, where promiscuity is a favor, where the ancient idea of being true to oneself means nothing anymore, in such a splintered and materialistic society, it is clear that this phenomenon of regression and homosexuality should be particularly welcome, and therefore it is in no way a surprise to see the alarming increase in homosexuality and the third sex in the latest democratic period, or an increase in sex changes to an extent unparalleled in other eras. Page 62 to 64.